We go. Good morning, everyone. We are here to talk kindergarten registration today. I do want to remind everyone this video is for training purposes only. The student information that you see today are not real students anywhere. They are sample data, scrambled data inside of a pilot server, so no real students' data is portrayed in this video, and any likeness to a real student is purely coincidental. So let's get started and talk about kindergarten registration, because I know most districts all throughout the state, if they have not already started, are making plans to get kindergarten registration underway as soon as you're back from spring break. So what has to take place, and can we go ahead and start entering next year's students into PowerSchool? So the answer to that is yes and no. It depends on that student's record and location, and if they've previously been somewhere in the state. And that's kind of how we have to always maintain and keep an eye on kids. I'll be completely honest, as we go through kindergarten registration and you get all of that paperwork in on your kids, you're going to have two stacks of students. One stack is going to be your kids who have never been in a school system in PowerSchool in the state of Alabama anywhere. If they've never touched PowerSchool, if they've never touched the state locator, then yes, you can absolutely go ahead and start entering those students in for next year. And I'm going to go through how you would do that. However, if the students have attended somewhere, and I know you're thinking, well, Stacy, they're kindergartners. How are they going to have attended somewhere? Well, we have a very robust pre-K, first class pre-K program across the state. So if they've ever been in a pre-K program across the state, that means they're already in PowerSchool. So if they're in your district, you're going to have to roll them up. You don't re-enter them. That will cause a duplicate. If they're in another district in a first class pre-K coming to your district, then you will have to wait until that district can process their summer withdrawals, which will not happen until the end of the year process has been run for districts. And that's slated to happen the week of June 6th through 13th across the state. So we'll get into all of that as we start that registration, but know that you're going to have to work in two silos with your kids. So you're really going to have to know and pay attention to your students when you're doing that registration process to know if you actually can continue with that enrollment, or if you have to put them in a side pack that really will not need to be, or will not be able to be enrolled until after end of year process in June. So let's get started with what has to happen in order for you to even start kindergarten registration inside of PowerSchool. So in my server right here, I'm at district office. So I'm going to navigate to one of my elementary schools to simulate us getting ready for kindergarten registration. In order to pre-register students, which is what the term is in PowerSchool, you actually have to have the next school year created. So the first thing, and I know a lot of districts are working on this right now because we're working on scheduling, is to set up your years and terms for the next school year. So if you're at the school level, you would come to set up in school, and at the very bottom of the page in the scheduling area is years and terms. Now you will see that I already have set up my 23-24 school year, but if you have not, you would just hit new. You would put the name 23-24, 23-24, first day and last day of school. And it's very important, I'm going to come down here and show you my terms, that you have the correct dates. I'm hoping by now that all districts have a board approved school calendar. If not, it's not the worst thing, but it means you're not going to be able to go as far as some of the other districts. If you do have your board approved school calendar, then please make sure that you actually put the first day of school that is on your calendar for students and the last day of school that is on your calendar for students. You do that full year for them. Also, make sure you always come back in and put that import term ID number right there. But if you don't have your calendar and you're like, well, I'm guessing we're probably going to start around August something and end around May something, that's fine to go ahead and put in your best guesstimate of dates. But if you're in that situation, you do not need to try to start doing any scheduling on this live site in your elementary schools until you have the actual dates, or it's going to cause you more work to fix those in the long run. So we'll talk about that later and in some scheduling stuff. But if you have the exact dates, you're good to keep going for a long way. If not, then really you can just work on the pre-registration. So once you have your new school year up and going in your years and terms, so I have 23-24 in the list, then you're going to notice that in your drop down up here, you will now have the 23-24 school year as a selector. That's all that has to be in place in order for you to start pre-registering kindergarten students. And it's very important that that's there because you need to be in that year when you do this enrollment so that you get the correct FTE value associated. FTE is a full-time equivalency value that's used in calculations of attendance and things such as that inside of PowerSchool. Every school year, your school is assigned a specific FTE ID number. If you do not register in the correct school year, you get the wrong FTE number assigned to the students, which means attendance calculations and everything else will not be correct. In fact, there's an actual error inside of the AIM official state collections tile that calls out if you have enrolled students in the wrong year or they have the wrong FTE ID because your ADA and ADM calculations will not be correct for the state. You'll have to get those corrected. So let's just make sure that we have it there and that we're in that year when we go to register. So let's pretend that we've gone through kindergarten registration. All the parents have come in, they filled out the paperwork, they've enrolled online, whatever it is that you have your district do, and you are ready to start entering these students into PowerSchool. So you need to first be in the 23-24 school year. And I've got a little plug-in on mine that tells me I'm in a future year because I like to know and be warned if I'm in a year other than the true one that I should be working in. Because I know that as a lot of registrars are out there, you're probably enrolling real kids in this school year while you're trying to do some enrollments in next school year. So you have to be very careful to make sure you're swapping back and forth in those years and you're in the correct year when doing your work inside of PowerSchool. So I'm going to go back to the main page. Now I'm going to simulate a non-online enrollment district as if we just enroll straight through this platform inside of here. I will show exactly what has to happen as well if you are an online enrollment district and you're delivering kids. So if we were just going through and let's say that I have a student. So I'm going to come down here to people and enroll student. And I've got John Wayne. John Wayne is in my stack of kindergarten registrations, and mom has said he's not attended school anywhere in the state. I know he was not a pre-K student in my district, and yes, we do have a pre-K program in my mock district right here. And that leads to another question. A lot of people say, Stacy, do we have to do the kindergarten registration if they're in our pre-K classes? The answer to that is no. They're already registered with you. So, and I know the moms always come to kindergarten registration because it's that new leap into the actual school year and they're going to fill out all that paperwork. But for those students, you don't actually enroll them as a new student. They're going to be rolled up in that end of year process and moved from your pre-K -1 grade level to grade level 0 or kindergarten inside of PowerSchool as that part of the end of year process. So you don't ever put back in your pre-K kids or it will incur as a duplicate student and then you have to go through PowerSchool support to get those cleaned up. So make sure that you know who your pre-K students are in your district if you have a first class pre-K program or any other pre-K program that already has them enrolled. This also includes our special ed pre-K services kids who are in your districts receiving services because they already have a record. That record will just roll up into kindergarten instead of you placing them as a new student in your district in kindergarten. So I have John Wayne who is going to enroll with us. And so I'm a bare minimum girl when it comes to what I put in here as far as a new student enrollment. I put the first and last name. The date of birth is 4/28/2017. He is a male. Don't use social. Here is one thing that caught a lot of people last year. When it comes to the enrollment date, PowerSchool is always going to place the current date. Today is March 16th in this field. It is very important that when you are pre-registering students that you change that to your first day of school next year. I tell everybody, grab you a post-it note, write next year's first day of school on it and stick it right on your computer. That way you're always looking at it when you do that enrollment. And I know you've got it up here in your head, but that's a visual just to remind you to put that date on there because again, even if I'm in next school year, if this date stays today's current date, it's putting them in this year and is going to again be a mismatch and cause all kind of issues. There are reports, and I'll show you some that you can run to catch these in case you have put them in a wrong year or used a wrong date. and you can get those corrected. But you want to make sure that this enrollment date is changed. So I need to change this to the first day of school, which is 8/7/2023. I'm going to choose my full-time equivalency, and they are going to be in kindergarten. And then what is my entry code? Everybody's a resident enrollment in the state. Okay. District of residence, I do like to go ahead and fill this one out on this page just because I don't want to have to go back to the transfer info page afterwards. So this is an in-district student. So the district of residence actually is, in this case, going to be the Opelika district. And I'm not going to worry with any of this right now. I'm going to go through and actually do that after I get the enrollment in. I even don't worry about linking with family information right now just because I want to search this real quick for training purposes. So there's my bare minimum. I need the name, I need the date of birth, gender, enrollment date. Ensure that you go and put next school year's date in there, grade level, and so forth. Scroll to the bottom, move my little validation, and hit submit. And so what it's going to do is it's going to go out to the state locator and say, hey, is there a John Wayne that matches this student? Now, mom has said they've never attended anywhere in the state, so my expectation is he should not show up on this list of students. And sure enough, when I look right here, nope, don't have the John Wayne. So I should see no match, new enrollment, and I'm going to hit next. I'm going to confirm that, and I'm going to let it load them in. And what you will notice is you'll be in next year's start date, and you have this status called pre-registered. And that's what happens if you go ahead and enroll a kindergarten student in this year, well, not in this year, but during this calendar time into the next school year with a future date. It pre-registers them, and the student will stay in a pre-registered status up until this date right here is run. So it goes through those nightly processes, and when it sees that date, it should flip them all from pre-registered to a registered and active status. Now, I do know that there's a bug out there that sometimes it does not flip those kids, and you can go find them and move them to an active status, but we don't want to do any of that until after end of year and state reports for this school year has been completed. So we'll talk about that more as we get into the summer and get into some of those summer enrollment type information. For now, leave them in that pre-registered status. So that's pretty much all there is to it, is making sure that you're in the correct year next year. So we're in 23-24 up here, and that you use the actual date that's the first day of school. This one right here is the one that trips people up the most out there. So now this was kind of the most simplistic example where the kid lines up exactly like it's supposed to everywhere. Mom said they didn't attend school. I didn't see them in the locator. I was able to process them on through. Let me show you a second example. I'm going to go back to the main screen. I'm going to go to enroll a student. And this time I've got Miss Chloe Smith. So Chloe's mom came to us in kindergarten registration and filled out all the paperwork. So, name, birth date, gender, enrollment date. So again, I've got to make sure that I go and change this to the first day of school, 8/7/2023. Again, going to be a full-time student and going to be a kindergarten student with a resident enrollment. Again, the student happens to be an in-district, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that district of residence. I do happen to know that this student moved, that mom came up here during their spring break. They were in Baldwin County, and they're moving to our system. And so this is going to be a new student, but she said, again, didn't attend school. So I'm going to mark nothing else on here. I like to move this just because I don't want to go through those in this training. And I'm going to hit submit. So my expectation again is that Chloe should not show up in the locator. Oh, but wait, she does. So I see right here, oh, Chloe is actually enrolled in Baldwin as a -1. She's in pre-K down there. So when I asked mom didn't think, oh, that pre-K is part of being in school. And so she told me, no, she wasn't in school. So I went ahead and started to register her. But this is where I have to put the brakes on it. If you go to register a student and they actually show up in the locator, whether they're currently enrolled, transferred out, inactive, no matter what their status is, if they show up in this list, and sure enough, there she is, there's the date of birth, you cannot process this enrollment, because what it will do is throw an E90 error message over on the other district and say, hey, you need to withdraw out. and they don't need to, because that student is going to continue in this school year, is going to finish this school year there as a pre-K kid, and then get withdrawn as a summer withdrawal so that you can pick them up. They have to go through that end of year process for state reporting in that other district, and they can't have a flag of any type of e-enrollment, or else you will not be able to even process in your district the end of year process. So if you get to this point and you're like, I've put in a kid, they've checked locator, and they showed up, you need to come here, scroll to the bottom of the page, and cancel the enrollment. That's going to back it out where it does not put Chloe in. And what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take Chloe's record. So here's her file, and I'm going to have to set it in a pile over here. And I've got to leave it over here, and I can't touch these students until we get the green light across the state that everyone has completed the end of year process. And I will send that email out to all districts across the state in June once everyone has completed it, so that then we can start moving kids across the state. So that's what you've got to be extremely cautious on. And that doesn't matter if you're doing like traditional enrollments through the UI, or if you're doing an online enrollment and you deliver kids and you go to resolve that E90 and you see them somewhere in the state. You have to stop those enrollments and do not process them through. That's the one caveat. The only kids you can enroll are those who've never been in PowerSchool in the state of Alabama. So this doesn't really just apply to kindergarten. I know a lot of times you have high schools that have athletes that come in at the end of the year. You might have a kid who's moved from North Carolina down to Alabama, and they're wanting to play football next year. And the coach is writing you saying, hey, I need you to get this kid enrolled so they can practice this summer. And they're probably telling you this at the end of May. If the kid's never been in Alabama, fine, you can go on and do exactly what we just did with that kindergarten student and pre-register them in. But if that kid is from somewhere in Alabama, let's say I've got a kid from Muscle Shoals who's moving down to Opelika, is going to play football, and we want to put him in. I cannot put that student in until everyone has run the end of year process. Okay, you can't move within the state and put any kind of pre-register status on a student until after the end of year process has been ran. So I would stop here with Chloe, move her file folder over here, and just know I have to do here after that email comes out in June. Okay, so there's your two situations within the UI. Now, let's see, I have another student that I want to look at. So let's say that you are an online enrollment system district, okay, because I know over half of the state uses online enrollment. In that process, you've got all the kids in your registration package, and you decide to deliver them over. And then once you deliver, it's going to throw all of your kids into this provisional enrollment status, and it throws them down here as an E90. So if, let's take Zion right here. Let's pretend Zion is a parent of a kindergarten registration student. They went to our online enrollment platform, and I decided to deliver the records. Now, if you ask Stacy, what's best practice? I tell people just to hold on delivering kindergarten kids until after end of year process, just so that you don't have to do any of this back and forth inside of here. You can just do it all at one time and start going down your list, resolving over and over again. Because what it does is it's going to throw all of your kids here, and you have to come through and resolve. And basically this resolve step is where it goes and searches the locator, just like what we saw when I was doing the registration, to see if they need to match a record and you need to move them in. So I'm going to take Zion right here. This was delivered over. I'm going to hit resolve. And notice, see, it's got my right thing here. It's got the date for next school year. So again, if you are an online enrollment customer, pay careful attention to what date your online platform is delivering, because a lot of them will tag the current date. And if it does, you are going to have to change the date right here to next school year. So if this actually said 3/16, because this is the date that he put the online enrollment in, you need to change that date to next school year's dates on this screen. Choose the code of the resident enrollment, and then hit submit. So it's going to go same thing that we just did on the regular side. I'm going to go through that process. So do I see Zion anywhere in this list? I do not. So that's perfect. That means I can go ahead and pre-register this student. Now, let's pretend I do see Zion, because this is where the problem comes in and why a lot of districts just will hold off on delivering until the end of year process. If Zion did show up in this, then I would need to cancel the enrollment. But not just that, I can't even have him in the E90 status, or else it's going to cause issues when your district tries to run the end of year process. So if you have delivered a kid from online enrollment to an E90 that exists somewhere in another district in the locator, you're going to have to no-show that student, which basically cancels the enrollment out to get them out of an E90 status. And then you're going to have to, again, take that kid's record, move it over here in this stack and say, I can't do anything with this student until after that June date of the end of year process has been run. So you'll have to wait on those. But in our case with Zion, he did not show up. So let's go back through it. Hit submit. We're good to go. He's not in this list, so no match. So I'm going to hit next, confirm. And in this case, this student was inactive because I pulled one that was already sitting in the E90, but you would see the exact same thing that you saw a while ago when I enrolled John Wayne and when I did Chloe. You would see that pre-registered status. So that's what it takes to get the students in, and that's by definition who you can actually go in and start enrolling up until the next school year. Now, I'm going to go back to the main screen because a lot of times people will say, okay, I've enrolled these students. Now I'm going to go start putting in their contacts and do all this. Now I know a lot of people go ahead and like work on those records as soon as they're enroll them. And some people will just go through a list and get all the kids in and then come back and update race and contacts and things such as that. But if I tried to search these students, like let's look at John Wayne that I enrolled a little while ago. If I start typing the name, John's not coming up. Well, it's because pre-registered students are actually classified as inactive, even though that's not the enrollment status. So you have to search them in a very specific way. So if you want to search for your pre-registered students, here's the formula that you're going to use. You're going to have to use a /1 because they're inactive. And you're going to say enroll_status equals -1. So right now I have 2 students that I have pre-registered. So enroll_status / whoops. Let me copy this and I'm gonna throw this in chat so that you have it. If you want to copy it and paste this somewhere, because that's your formula, you're gonna search. And now I can see my pre-registered kindergarten or whatever grade level students that you have inside of your school. That's how you'll search them back up. Then you can go into their records as much as you want to and do whatever you need to. So if I need to go to contacts and I need to add the contact in, I can come over here. I can search. So I'm going to search Royster. And I'm gonna, oh, and here's one thing I always tell people: when you're searching for contacts on the kids, make sure to include inactive, okay? Because a lot of times they're in there and might not be associated with anybody. You want to see all of them. I wish that would come as a default, but it doesn't. But always check that box. That way you see a comprehensive list. So I'm gonna search for myself. And there I am right there. So there's my contact, and I'm going to submit. Great thing right there. So now you can go through and start working with your kids. So enroll_status equals -1 is going to be one that is really great. That's going to help you to identify any kids that you have done in a pre-registered status. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have different reports that we can use to find kids where we forgot to change that date, because I told you it's very important that when you're on this transfer info screen, that this date right here, that entry date, is next school year, that first date. Inside of PowerSchool, there's a PSCB set of reports for enrollments that I absolutely love. I tell everybody use them all throughout the year. Oh, it's not enrollment. It's under validation, I believe. I always have to remember where it's at. Nope. It is. Well, now I got to remember where it's at, y'all. Well, I can look at the entry and exit codes, but I will tell you, these right here will not show the ones that you need. Like if you tried to search for entry and exit codes for next school year, because these kids are still in an inactive state, it won't actually show these kids on these reports. Now my brain just went completely. Where is my? It's the one that shows the in and out. It's making me wonder. I have to do it a different way. Grade and attendance. Oh, here it is. It's under validation. It's invalid enrollment dates and invalid entry dates. So if I go to invalid enrollment date or invalid entry dates, this will tell me anybody who does not fall within the first and last days of the current school year. So you can see if I'm hitting on 22 and 23. So it'll tell me 23, 24. If anybody has a date that's not within those dates, it'll let me know. So like on this one right here, it's got the term first date is 8/7, but this kid was rolled on 8/9. I could go through and fix those. So always make sure that you run this report, because it'll tell you any kids who are out of whack with whenever that first date of school is for whatever school year you need to look at. Somebody just typed in the chat, should I create my next school year before beginning the online pre-registration? Yes, I highly recommend go ahead and have everybody go ahead and create that, at least the overarching school year, for all schools in the district. And keep in mind, let me show you, that is actually something that can be pushed from district office. So if you are the district PowerSchool person on this webinar, remember that under setup and district, we do have under district information this batch school setup process that I highly recommend people use to push some of this stuff. And see, notice I've already pushed it on all my schools, but one of the things you can do is push your years and terms setup. So you can create all the years and terms at one school, and once you have it, you can push it to all the rest of the schools in the district, and that way you don't have to touch. So for school systems that have 20, 30, 40 schools, you can go ahead and get that taken care of. Stephanie, can we go ahead and set up our calendar before we do end of year? Will it wipe it out? Stephanie, it depends on if you're using Power Scheduler or not. I tell everybody to just wait until after end of year. You can set up your calendar at district and have it hold in there and then push it afterward. If you're using Power Scheduler, yes, it will wipe your schedule completely out because it reformats all the day cycles and everything else. In the elementary schools, they say you can, but I've even had times where it's gone funny with it. So it just might be one of the things that you want to hold on. Now, well, the only thing is when you're at the high schools, once you run your schedule, your Power Scheduler, and you commit it, your counselors can't adjust anything until a calendar is set. So you should be fine to do it before end of year, but you can't do it before committing your schedule if using Power Scheduler, if that makes sense. Because it does have to be set up. So if I use Power Scheduler for secondary, but LiveSide for elementary, then yeah, you can go ahead and set it up in the elementary schools, but you cannot set it up in the secondary schools until you've committed your schedule. But once you hit that commit button in Power Scheduler and you move it to the LiveSide and people are going to start working in there, your first thing you have to do is go set up the calendar, because you can't add courses. You can drop courses from a student on the LiveSide, but you can't add courses without a calendar being set up. Okay. Yeah, that always gets kind of tricky little dance right there. So guys and gals, ladies and gentlemen, that's really it top to bottom as far as kindergarten registration. So everyone who's wanting to go ahead and get everything inside of there, that's the two piles of kids you're going to work with. If they've never been in PowerSchool, if they don't show up in state locator, y'all can start enrolling to your heart's desire. But if you go to enroll and they show up in the locator, you got to stop. You got to cancel the enrollment. You got to put them on the here and go, I can't touch them until after end of year. So again, the end of year process is going to be run for the whole state the week of June 6th through 12th or 13th, whatever. It's Tuesday to Tuesday because all state reports are due that third Friday in June. And so I will send an email out when every district has been ran, because we cannot start doing anything to kids until after everyone's ran. And then when you can start your summer withdrawals and things such as that. And we'll do a second webinar that goes through the steps of how to process the summer withdrawal correctly. We're going to take these in chunks. That way you don't get overwhelmed with it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so that can render, and then I'm going to let y'all just ask away any questions that you have. So y'all give me just 2 seconds.